Welcome to the Good Food CFO podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Delavan, once again joined by our producer, Chelsea Steer.
Hey, Sarah. Welcome to season 11 of the podcast.
I'm so excited to be launching a brand new season. It's so
Yeah.
exciting. Season 11, you're back here again with me. And on top of that, we've got an episode with a dear friend of mine, which is really exciting. Pace Webb and her husband, Chris Georgalas. Chris, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right. I apologize if I'm not. Are the founders of Daddy's Chicken Shack. And they joined me for a conversation about Pace's entrepreneur journey and experiences as the founder of Taste of Pace, which was a prominent LA-based catering company, to joining forces with her now husband to launch Daddy's Chicken Shack, which is a fast casual concept that launched in Pasadena, so not far from my home. Still to this day is my favorite spicy chicken sandwich. I don't know if it will ever be kicked off its throne, but Daddy's gained widespread acclaim pretty quickly and eventually went on to sell 150 franchise units nationwide in 18 months. And that success, led by Pace and Chris, resulted in a lucrative acquisition by a private equity firm called Area 15 Ventures. And that sale happened in 2023. So since then, even before then, but especially since then, I've wanted to have Pace and Chris on the show to talk about their experience because number one, Pace was my first consulting client. And I talk about that a little bit, in the main episode and how forever grateful I am to her for the chance that she gave me to really explore and try new things with her and prove some of my concepts. But beyond that, from the outside observing her, I was able to see some tough decisions that she had to make, some experiences that she was having that I just was so proud of her for and was really excited to share with our audience.
Yeah, I love that you are talking about, watching her make decisions, because I think that's just from listening myself, a really big theme of this episode is all throughout the journey, like how did they make decisions? And some of the things I want to call out just that I heard while listening. Number one is that within all of those decisions that they've had to make, right, there is a sense of adaptability and an ability to very quickly pivot when necessary. And what I think is so great and what I think founders can take from listening to this is that you are absolutely going to hear in Pace and Chris's voice the immense amount of passion that they have and had for every venture they've been a part of, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they also had a very healthy detachment as well that I think allowed for them to understand when it was time to make those pivots and to do it in a timely fashion. And the other piece that I really was very exciting to me to listen to was to hear Chris talk about the way that he really looked at what was happening, not just in the food industry, but in other industries, right? That he thought were comparative to the food industry, and his ability to really identify trends in the way that things were going and to almost be ahead of the curve on those things inside the food industry and inside their business. And I think that that gave them such a strong foundation to work from.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too, those very things that I think Chris was identifying that led to the decision, some of the decisions that they made, they're very BABOYOT. Like you'll hear us talk about the size of their, first, brick and mortar restaurant. You'll hear us talk about, a lot of things that from the outside had people, including me, going, what are they doing here? But I've been talking lately about the book Clear Thinking, and this is very much an example of two people doing something that looks different, sort of stepping out of what at the time was like that social norm for the food industry. And it looked a bit strange, but in the end, they had created something successful, right? And completely different than what had been done before. And it's really something to celebrate, just as a food business success and also a BABOYOT success story.
Yeah, and Sarah, speaking of BABOYOT, Before we get into this conversation, I would love to take a moment to do a BABOYOT member highlight.
I love that.
So today we're highlighting our annual member, Chris Gilmore, and his brand, Wild Muskoka Botanicals. So if you're listening, you might be familiar with Chris from our Ask the Good Food CFO episode that we did last season. If you remember, that's when Chris braved a wild thunderstorm and a power outage just to join us for that BABOYOT member event. Wild Muskoka creates artisan foods, drink mixers, and bitters. Their products are sustainably wild foraged in the woods of Muskoka. And as they say, eat wild, live wild.
I also want to give a shout out to Laura, Chris's business partner and life partner. She's the founder and the creator of the products at Wild Muskoka. So, hey, Laura, thank you as well for your support here.
I love that. Yes. Thank you, Laura. If you'd like to learn more about Wild Muskoka Botanicals, you can visit their website at www.wildmuskoka.com. And of course, we will include that link in our show notes as well. And if you'd like to hear your brand highlighted on the show, consider becoming a member. You can learn more by visiting thegoodfoodcfo.com and clicking on membership. So, Sarah, I recently sent you a short video from PBS. It was actually from their series, Brief but Spectacular.
Yeah. I never knew. I didn't know that this existed. I didn't know Brief but Spectacular was a thing. And it sent me down a rabbit hole of watching a lot of really amazing stories there. But what you sent me was a really beautiful story, I thought, about a gentleman named Narciso Martinez. He paints the people who feed America. So his story is that he, grew up in Mexico. He came to the United States. He enrolled in high school to learn English and graduated from high school at the age of 29. He then went on to study at Cal State in Long Beach. And in the summers, to put himself through school, he picked produce on farms in the state of Washington. And while he was there, he talks about the big words and the things he's learning in college, but also, what he was learning about people that he was working shoulder to shoulder with on the farm, talking slang with them, and, what that environment was like. And he talks about how in America, the people who pick our food, the people who truly feed America are at the bottom of the strata, as he calls it, of society. And he wanted to change that. And then something really powerful that he said was that these are human beings. They are not machines. And from that, he wanted to celebrate them and also share their stories and show that humanity. And so while he was still in school, he started drawing the people that he was working with on the farms. And, it was art class. And so they were critiquing, the art and the, not talking about the people. He actually got a bit frustrated about that, stopped drawing for a little while, and then returned to drawing no longer on paper, but now on produce boxes. And the visual impact that has, the message that sends, for me, I got chills. I was taken aback by just how beautiful this art is juxtaposed, on these boxes. So you've got banana boxes with a man picking bananas drawn beautifully on it. I just think it's really spectacular. And he links together a number of, boxes to make large murals, and he's had exhibitions, and he talks about the sort of the power and the beauty in those farm workers being able to come and see the art and see themselves represented in that way. And my journey into the food industry through, I've talked about it before, my skin issues, and really understanding that food is medicine and that the best food comes from farms. It's real food, it's local, and to early on want to support the farmers and the farms who are treating people right and paying fair wages and giving them proper bathrooms and breaks and all of those important things. And it's a tricky thing to do. It should be a standard in our country. It is not. It's something that we fight for through our food choices, for those of us who are able to. It's something we fight for by going to farmers markets and directly supporting, the farms. And I think by extension, and this is why you sent me that video, Chelsea, when we found good food businesses and when we support good food businesses, we're supporting that kind of work. We're supporting the mission of a sustainable and viable food system and supply chain. And so we want to take a moment today to celebrate farm workers, farmers, but also the majority of our listeners who are good food founders, who have a mission to change the world through food and who are helping to deliver so much to so many people around the country.
That's exactly why I sent it to you, because when I watched it for the first time, I couldn't help but think about all of the founders that not only listen, but that we've interacted with, that we've heard their stories, and we know how hard they are working to make it work, right? And to be able to provide good food into the homes of people across this country.
So we want to say thank you for the work that you do. And also thank you for being here in support of the work that we are doing to support you and the greater, good food movement. We can't say thank you enough.
I couldn't have said it better, Sarah.
Well, Chelsea, thank you for sending that video to me. As our producer, you do an awesome job of finding great stories, and in this case, art to share with us. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. And we're definitely going to include a link to that video in the show notes so that everyone listening has a chance to see it as well, because I agree. I think it's really special.
So without further ado, let's get to the main episode. Pace and Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Good to see you.
You too. So we have, I think, a lot to cover here. I'm going to be really honest, like right up front. I have known you, Pace, for how many years now?
At least 10.
I was going to say it's got to be at least 10. And I wanted to have you on the podcast because your work, your businesses, like so many things have changed since we first met. I think that your story is so interesting and how you've worked with Chris to really, to create a business. And we're going to kind of dive into all of that. But I think there's so much that founders and aspiring founders can learn from both of you. So I'm really excited to have you here today.
I just love to share our stories because it's therapeutic, right? So I think a lot of times in the entrepreneurial journey, I know for us at least, we've been like, boy, are we crazy? Like, what are we doing? I was like, I think we need to grab a bottle of wine, spend some time on the porch tonight and listen to an episode of How I Built This with Guy Raz and feel all warm and cozy again. No, we're not the only crazy ones out there. So we like to share our stories, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful, to make you guys know you're not crazy. Well, you are, but you're in the right place.
I love that. Yeah, you are crazy. You're doing the riskiest thing, right? One of the hardest things ever, I think, aside from parenthood, probably.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so Pace, you and I met about 10 years ago, we'll say. I sort of, where I was on my journey was I had just left a full-time job. I had posted on Instagram that I was a consultant. I was like, just sort of like putting it out into the world. And you and I got connected. And I don't know if I've ever said this to you, but I want to say it to you here. Working with you was a big turning point for me in my career, because there were so many things that I wanted to do. I had so many ideas and I had been able to execute some of them in the role that I had just left. But there were so many more things that I was like, I have this idea and I think that it can help. And when you reached out to me to consult on like food costing and margins and stuff, and we talked about my tools, you were like, yeah, let's try it. Let's do it. And so you were like an experiment in a way, and you gave great feedback, and it was just really an awesome experience and helped build my confidence for like, yeah, you can go and do this. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. No, what you had to show me, it came at the right time when you just are like, oh, like haven't had water, need water, drinking water, right? It's that feeling of instant relief.
Yeah.
In a space that, when you're a small business, it's harder. You can't, buy the super sexy software, right?
Yeah.
So you need that middle ground. So and that's exactly what you were doing at the time.
It was awesome. So you had a catering company at the time called Taste of Pace. But can you give us a little bit of history on like how you got into the food industry? And then, was Taste of Pace your first food business or did you do things before? And tell us a bit.
Long time. I think entrepreneurship, you probably always see it from the time that you're a child. There's always signs. If you were to ask your family and look back, I was always like, I had a lemonade stand as soon as you could do something like that. Like whenever there were contests, like Girl Scout cookies, I was always the top seller. If there was like a Christmas contest to sell all the crap in the catalog, like wrapping paper, I was always like the top seller. I was like, I'm gonna get that boom box. You know what I mean? So I kind of always had that in me and just had natural leadership. And before food, I had a weird experience. I had cancer in high school, colon cancer, very strange. So it kind of led me on this wellness journey of like, ooh, what is healthy living and food all about? And so I started an essential oil company actually. Like
Oh,
it didn't
wow.
really, I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, I don't know, 19 or 20. It was really fun. I learned a lot of things and failed, and that's okay because half of it is just like starting it and doing something. To tie the next step together, I'm like a fourth generation entertainer, meaning I come from three previous generations of women who are like homemakers, entertainers, party throwers, not necessarily amazing cooks. The food wasn't necessarily the focus, but the gathering of people. So I kind of grew up with that. And our house was always the social hub. But I didn't know like that was a career when you're, a child.
Yeah.
Your parents certainly probably aren't going to be like, would you like to explore catering or culinary arts as a career? You want your kid to be like a lawyer or a doctor or
Yeah.
something. I don't know. So after the high school experience, going abroad in a couple different countries, doing some college, and then coming back around to food, but kind of through the um, health way of like,
Yeah.
ooh, I'm gonna not eat this or eat that. 'Cause it was a long healing journey after my cancer.
Yeah.
And when I started learning more about it, it became less about health and more about the best quality ingredients and bringing people together for joyous occasion over like the freshest butter from, right from the
Yeah.
cow and the freshest and the best. And that's when I like really healed through that journey. And I didn't intend to start a catering business. People just kept asking me, can you do this? Can you do like some leadership skills, a little bit of charisma and some culinary training. And it all kind of came together organically. And then it was just like, oh my gosh, over time, you're like, well, this is a big thing now. And
Yeah.
it's this
Here
big
we are.
machine with lots of people. And I remember looking around sometimes at these huge events at high profile places and be like, yeah, I did this. I made this. This is a little crazy. I got like a million people reporting to me and I'm in the home of blah, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
moments. So that's kind of the taste of pace journey.
Yeah. Chris, were you always sort of entrepreneurial yourself or what was your journey like?
I wouldn't say that. My background's much different, less sexy than Pace's. As a chef, my first career was on Wall Street. So I was a trader, institutional equity trader for Deutsche Bank,
Okay.
and I was in the hospitality sector, so gaming, lodging, restaurants, and leisure at the time. It was a long time ago, and those were kind of the formative years for me. There was a lot of disruption at the time going on with what happened in the '90s with the internet boom. And I carried a lot of that knowledge over to what became Daddy's Chicken Shack.
Yeah. So let's get to that part. So how many years did you operate Taste of Pace
Okay,
for?
so let's tie in the daddy's part here because that's where Chris
Okay.
really comes into the picture.
Yeah.
So let's say around 2017, like I'd had the idea for Daddy's Chicken Shack, which is the fried chicken sandwich concept. Because of our catering business, we were hired to do this quote unquote celebrity party. And in LA, you're just like, maybe it will be, maybe it won't be. They're
Right.
paying me all the same. It's all good. And in my mind, I'm like, well, I don't really do like tacos and sliders. But in my business mind, I was like, we will accommodate your request, whatever you have.
Yeah.
So I rock up. I was like, oh, a little bit of, buttermilk fried chicken sandwich on brioche with the sriracha, Thai style slaw, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and a sweet squash blossom. So like, I'm going to fancify it. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
Well, dang, Mandy Moore and Ryan Adams were the first people to get there. And I was like, shoot, this better be good. And they tweeted about it that night. People were literally coming in the kitchen, grabbing the fried chicken sandwiches before I could barely keep up with them. That was the item. That was the hot ticket. Me and my sous chef make a joke that night. We're like, forget all this fine dining stuff because it's just so hard and so high touch. We're like, let's just have a fried chicken sandwich stand. So I call my dad the next day because I love to call my parents and be like, you're not going to believe what happened last night and your crazy Hollywood stories, right? And I was like, yeah, it could be your retirement plan. And you could, fried chicken on the Venice Pier and flirt with the ladies and wear a Hawaiian shirt. Not his personality, by the way. And I was like, and we can call it Daddy's. And he belly laughed so loud. I was like, ooh, Daddy's Chicken Shack. That has a good ring. So I got really into like, ooh, could I do something with this? And then I kind of like did a business plan, put it on a shelf. So I was like, I'm working 7 days a week with my other business and I just don't have the bandwidth for it.
Yeah.
Then I meet Chris. Do a dinner party for him. He has a sandwich and I'll let him take over from there.
Yeah, so we meet. I'm still working for a Wall Street firm at the time, and we meet in about January 2015, and it moved pretty fast. We really enjoyed each other's company. Cut to 6 months later, it's my birthday, and Pace decides to throw a party for about 20 of my friends. And they have the sandwich. They're firing up the sandwich for everybody, and take a bite of the sandwich. And I'm like, this is it. How are you not doing something with this? This is your Shake Shack, right? And she's like, funny you should say that. But a few years ago, there was this concept that I had for Daddy's Chicken Shack, a fried chicken sandwich concept, but I was too busy to do something. I was like, well, you should do something with this. And she's like, well, you should leave your finance job and do it with me. And that was kind of the joke at the time, right? So that's really, she planted a seed. I was not looking to get into food, but I was in hospitality. I was a trader. I loved all of the Danny Meyer restaurants back in the day, back in New York, right? So it was 11 Madison Park, and I loved, Gramercy Tavern and Union Square Cafe, I think was the other one.
Yeah.
And then Shake Shack was born. So that's where that was kind of sitting there, right? Just idle. And once Pace brought that up, I was like, you know what? Maybe it is time. Maybe I'm done with this chapter in my life, and maybe it's something to do something really fun together. And maybe I am really entrepreneurial because I always had that itch. And it took a couple years, and right around late 2017.
Okay, so this is where it gets wild. We're like, ooh, maybe he's like, let's just do it. We have Sundays. We'll just work 16 hours every Sunday on top of what we have, and we'll do it together. And we'll just see if there's something there. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds awesome. Let's do it. Right, we're crazy. What else? We don't have any kids yet. Yeah. We're like, okay. So there's this opening. I don't know if anybody remembers, in November 2017, there was this amazing Texas-style barbecue joint that had a very short-lived life in Los Angeles. Called Pearl's Barbecue.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome, like rustic indoor outdoor place, illegal smoker. Like this thing came and went real fast, but it was so good. We did their pop-up for their grand opening, and we sold 400 sandwiches. Chris and I, put together a tent and didn't kill each other with supplies from Home Depot. It was a test, but we made it through.
Yeah. And keep in mind, not to interrupt, keep in mind, I've never, ever worked in food ever in my life. I wasn't allowed to work.
Oh, so you got thrown into a live pop-up event with zero experience and put out 400 sandwiches?
Zero. Yeah, never worked at a fast food restaurant. We were athletes growing up, and they were like, no, we'll take care of that. You got to focus on your sports and your academics. So I never had those jobs growing up that you have in your teenage years. So, I was like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll be front of house. I can do this. How hard can it be? Like anybody else with the restaurant industry. And then,
But we practiced, and he was amazing, and it was really smooth, and it was awesome. And I invited Zach from Smorgasburg to be like, do you think we can get into Smorgasburg? Because that's where we really wanted to test and hone our skills. He came. He loved the sandwich. He loved the look. He's like, absolutely. Like, definitely come. And so we started Smorgasburg in January. And that's how we learned. Things really, I wouldn't say happen overnight, but there was a steady increase. And we learned a lot of things, systems, recipes, testing out, staff. And before we moved into a brick and mortar, which was great. So by the time we moved into a brick and mortar, we kind of had the basics down and we learned more stuff.
I want to back up though, because this is amazing. And first of all, your Daddy's is my favorite fried chicken sandwich of all time.
The spicy Daddy is your favorite, right?
The spicy Daddy, yes, specifically. It is like no other. If I could, would have eaten that sandwich every day of my life. It was a good thing that I lived so far away from your location. But we would visit Smorgasburg and we would have your sandwich like, a couple Sundays here and there. And then anytime I would go to get my hair cut, because your location, which we'll get into in a minute, was very nearby my salon. And I would also bring like sliders and stuff to my stylist as like a treat. You get to keep her in good graces. You know what I mean? So you get good hair all the time. And the sandwiches worked perfectly. So I wanted, though, before we go too far into the daddy story, I want to talk about number one. You were doing Taste of Pace for a while. You were doing it not solo, but it was your business. You'd been doing it for several years. You've decided now to take a chance, take a shot, and start a second business. So you're doing these two things simultaneously
Yes.
for some amount of time.
Yes.
So you're like basically full time in both of these eventually, right? So when COVID hits, Taste of Pace is still a business, correct? Like it's still operating, but I'm sure it changes during that time frame.
That's right. It really changed overnight, honestly. I mean, it just absolutely plummeted like most restaurants
Yeah.
in Los Angeles. So my time became much freer
Yeah.
from that point on. But I'm like a diehard systems, processes, training person. So
Yeah.
having the two businesses simultaneously was manageable.
Okay.
Not like running. I knew how not to run myself into the ground by that point and put the
Yeah.
right people in place. And not that it always was perfect by any means, but it
Yeah.
was manageable. And
Yeah.
Chris was working in the business as well. And that's probably the key too, is you have an ownership presence more in Daddy's and an ownership presence more in Taste of Pace. And that's how we could really do it.
Yeah, and the
Okay.
idea, really was, you have this catering business that's, you're busy around the clock and you're working late hours, and then, you're busy during the holidays and you're busy during wedding season, all these event seasons, and then it dries up a little bit. So it was a way to diversify. It was almost like a hedge, right? Where we
Yeah.
were able to, have this other business that was a little more consistent and we can build it together, because we were thinking about having a family and how are we going to do that if she's, working an event till midnight. I'm still working on a trading desk somewhere and like working crazy
Yeah.
hours. So we were
Yeah.
really thinking about our future and thinking about, planning for our family.
Yeah. I also think so when you move from the sort of every Sunday at Smorgasburg, which is essentially like for anyone who doesn't know, can you describe what that event is like?
It's so magic, but you have to be a certain kind of person to say that. It's really hard work and long days. You have to like be at the kitchen to load out at 4:30 in the morning, pack and lift heavy coolers. We had someone who eventually took that part over, make sure nothing's, missing or messed up from the prep day before, because you're bringing quite a bit of food. And then you get there and you set up and the sun is just coming up and it's very quiet, but you have to kind of keep moving at a steady pace to get it all done by the time, 9 o'clock comes around. And then there's the Michelada tent right next to us. So they turn on like super loud, like cumbia in the morning. And then you get your favorite breakfast coffee here and your spot here. And you talk to they become your Sunday family.
Yeah.
And that part is just, hospitality people. We just live for other hospitality people. And it becomes this family-like environment. And then there's the days where it rains, right? So it's like really wonderful when it's wonderful, which is most of the time, and then not. And then it's like blazing hot sun on a tarp. And then you didn't make enough money because it rained or it was too hot. But mostly it was, like I said, most of the time was really good, or so-and-so didn't show up for work. So it's like, it's definitely hard, but no different than, that's just the hospitality business.
It was a really special experience, I think, for both of us, because just the volume of it, you have 55 vendors, you have, actually probably more than that, probably like 75 vendors, 55 food vendors. And when we started, I think it may have been around 4,000 people, and it just kept growing every week. And then it was, at one point, I think it hit 13,000 people in that parking lot.
Yeah.
Right. And things have to ebb and flow, and you become a family, and like, all right, we're out of napkins, and you can ask your neighbor for some napkins, and people are trading oysters with us, and we're trading sandwiches. And, some of these people we're still very close to after years have gone by. And it was just a very, great. It was a great experience for us starting the business.
And we go home, get everything broken down, go back to the kitchen, break it down, go home. Okay, tally up. How much money did we make today, or did we lose today? So we knew, okay, how much did we? We would always go to Skid Row right after to give any leftovers to people.
Nice.
And the people that attended Smorgasburg, they're food people. So you're getting just top-notch feedback. Every single guest, they're coming to you. Hey, would you ever think about doing this? You guys should have a spicy sandwich, or what about this kind of fries, or a loaded fry? So a lot of the menu that ultimately led to what Daddy's Chicken Shack might be now happened during that process. And it was really just connecting with our guests and with the people that were waiting online sometimes for an hour plus just to get it in the in the hot sun.
I think that's such an important part to go back to. So thank you for doing that with me, because I think it's that customer feedback phase, right? No matter what kind of food business you have, whether it's farmers markets or whether you're doing a pop-up or whatever it is, to have some amount of permanency or regular, like pop-up location, a place where you can regularly connect with your community and get that feedback in the early stages, I think is super important, and often does like fuel and support the success of a brand. And it sounds like it was a really important part of your journey. So after some amount of time, you decide to move into a location. And from what I remember and what we've talked about Pace, there was a lot of strategy that went into like the size of the location and lots of other things. So can you kind of talk us through like some of that and some of the decisions and strategy that went into how you structured Daddy's?
Yeah, so it was kind of like with anything, we are big, prove it first, start small. People don't wait on a big investment to test out an idea. Most investors don't want that anyway. They want to see that the proof of concept first, right?
Yeah.
So it was like, well, my catering business, can move into the back part. And that business is pretty predictable. We know how many people we need in the kitchen most days. We know the revenue it's going to bring in. We know the rent it can afford. Yeah. And so if you looked at that and we split everything 50-50 with Daddy's, I was like, all I need is a walk-up window. That's really all I wanted anyway, because with Taste to Pace, it's high end, right? So you're going back 10 times before you get a proposal, bidding on $50,000 weddings, talking about details ad nauseum. And I'm just like, just eat the food. It's going to be great. Okay. Just like, we'll see you later.
You just functioned for how many like months with essentially a window.
Oh,
right? For Daddy's.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I was so burnt out, I think, on the fussiness of food. I was looking to get back to such a simple transaction. And growing up in Texas, some of my most memorable moments are like smoked meats at some random gas station off of a trailer. Mm-hmm. And there's just nothing like it. So that's what I kind of wanted to get back to. I don't cook food to show you how fancy I am. I cook food because I love you and I want to take care of you and I want to feed you something that tastes like a warm hug feels. Yeah. So I was like, I wanted to be like, hello, how are you? Would you like a sandwich? Yes, I would like a sandwich. Here's your sandwich. I hope you have a great day. You know what I mean? Like, I just was like, oh, yes, I want to get back to that simplicity of like the exchange. Yeah. So hence we had the smallest restaurant in Pasadena. It was like 100 square foot inside, four two tops on the sidewalk outside and 5 little tables.
I just want to say something about the location because people need to know that it was 6 months in after we started the festival, and it was found on Craigslist, by the way. So this is again me, green, the green guy, restaurant guy who knows nothing about restaurants, being like, I'll find a location. It's going to be in Pasadena, California, and I'm going to find it on Craigslist. And I found a place on Craigslist.
Well, he's like, I think we should start looking for a location. I was like, sure, it'll take like a year, but you go ahead and start. And then he found it, and I was like, oh, okay.
How quick? Like in a couple of weeks?
Well, no, I started looking at, I want to say we launched at Smorgasburg July 18. And then in January of 18, around June, July of 18, I started looking and we signed a lease. I want to say we signed a lease around August.
Okay. 8 weeks. I mean,
it was like Meet the Fockers movie where like things are going well and all the green lights and the upgrade to first class and the champagne. That was what it was like. You're like, oh,
I was like, this is
waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, this is
I was like, this is going to be great. There's no parking. There's no bathrooms. There's a giant red curb in front of it. There's actually no seating at all. So like, it didn't make any sense. None of it made sense, but that's what kind of forced us to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah. Now, okay, is it true or am I making this memory up? Because something that was happening around that same time or maybe had already been happening was the like Uber Eats and sort of all of the platforms that were like order your food on our app and we'll bring it to you. From my position as a CFO, it was like these fees that these apps are charging food businesses is astronomical and it's really eating into profit margin. And I feel like we had a conversation pace where you were like, we worked it into our business model because we
Yeah,
knew without the seats this would be a thing.
yeah. And I can go back to the trading desk days back at Deutsche Bank, where I'd already seen it happen a couple times. I saw it happen with big box retail, and all of us saw it, right? Big box
Mm-hmm.
retail from like Borders, Barnes and Noble to Amazon, and then Blockbuster, which we grew up
Yeah.
on, just going away and going to Netflix and Napster and Spotify coming around and blowing out the Virgin Megastore and Tower Records. All those things were happening, right?
Yeah.
So it happened in retail and entertainment, and then it happened in hotels and travel. So that's really where we kind of had a crystal ball into two segments where it had already happened, but it really hadn't hit the restaurant industry yet. So we were thinking like, okay, well, one of the rules of thumb is don't build your castle on somebody else's land, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I always took that away, and I understood that I knew that the CEO of Expedia, Dara Khosrowshahi, had gone to Uber Eats, right? And his whole thing with Expedia, because it was controversial, right? Expedia was, hey, shame on you if we send somebody to your hotel and you can't convert them into your guest, right? Until to your customer, to your guest.
Mm-hmm.
And that stuck with me, right? So it was like, okay, well, we can be partners, right? We're competitors, but we're also partners. So it was a partnership. I saw that we could take, these third-party relationships and use them as a marketing strategy, and people that wouldn't normally find us might find us there because that's where the attention was. So the attention was on these third-party aggregator platforms, and it had already happened in hotels and travel, airlines.
Yeah.
And we just kind of were like, all right, well, Expedia, Priceline, Travelocity, et cetera, is kind of like Uber Eats, DoorDash, Grubhub, et cetera, right? So we took that strategy and we're like, but we have to create a first party channel. And that's where the technology came in, where we're like, we got to build a website. We have to be able to order through the website. We have to have a strategy to be able to convert from third party, because it's technically not your guest if you don't have the data. It's their guest, their customer, right? Yeah. So we had to figure out how to do all those things. So we had that strategy in place all throughout 2018, 2019. I remember getting our first Postmate order and going crazy and then being like, all right, what do we do now? Okay, we got to convert that to our guests and figure out how to do that, right?
Yeah.
But all of that happened leading into COVID, when the pandemic hit March 2020. Yeah. So we already had that strategy in place where we had, we would really R&D'd a lot. We R&D'd food for travel. We R&D'd, sealing the bags. Where there were different things that we had to navigate. How fast can we get the food out? And this is food that's being cooked from scratch. It's not fast food. It's quick casual, right?
Yeah.
So how do we shorten those ticket times? How do we then get it from point A to point B? And how long is it going to be good? Okay. So, and that Pace can talk more to the recipes and stuff like that. But that strategy was in place for the first year and a half.
Yeah. And I want to pause here. I like to do this on the podcast, just sort of pause and go, okay, what can other people learn from this? And this is one of the many reasons I wanted to have you guys on the show, is because I think the way that you thought through things, and I think partially Chris too, or not partially, but credit to your outside eyes, right? You're understanding of business and industry and the way things are moving. It seems like, okay, Pace can focus on the food and her expertise is the execution, right? On the model that you're going, this is the way the food industry is going to go, whether COVID happened or not, right? You saw that coming, which is really fascinating. I also want to paint the picture of if people know of Pasadena and maybe you've been there, maybe you've seen it, I don't know, somehow, there's people walking around. It is a beautiful location. You all were on a side street, I think across from a parking lot or you didn't have a sexy location. And so I want to just kind of also point that out, because I think the apps are right. Obviously, as you said, Chris, they help people find you. And then this idea of converting them to your own customer, I think is so important. And I just want to echo that for people to hear, but also this reinforcement of this food is not precious. This food is delicious. we want you to want to come back, and we want to get you this food fast and fresh and like in its best condition. And I think that lack of preciousness is another kind of thing that people can take away from this episode.
Definitely.
So tell us, Pace, about the food part, about the execution of like, how did you, and the recipes, and there was some evolution, I know too, of the sandwiches.
Oh, absolutely. You have to, we would set timers and different packaging and say, okay, if our average is 30 minutes, this is the max that it's going to be to our standard for is 30 minutes. So we better dang well do that. And when Chris was working at the front of house, you're not there, Uber's not there, and they say they're there, you're getting a phone call right away. Where's your driver? Where's your driver? Where's your driver? And he'll go to battle. But that's kind of what it took to make sure the customer was getting our very best all the time. So there were tweaks to the recipe to make the chicken extra crispy on the outside, tweaks to the packaging, and always like, oh, but we want to do sustainable cups, but they melt under the heat lamps, and we need a heat lamp for the package right now because we need the food to stay hot. So it was like, okay, so we got to put the sauces in a different place with the drinks so that they don't, but then, people were forgetting to put the sauce in the bag with the right name and the drink. So then we had to develop a system for that. So it was all a process of evolution of developing a system which is totally doable and havable to achieve excellence with time, flavor, and quality.
I love it. I also I have always loved your attention and focus on process, efficiency, like data, information. I mean, I remember we worked a little bit together when you were like, help me format, the inventory sheets for daddies. Like I want to, be able to make sure that like, we're not bringing in too much, but we're also not, shortchanging ourselves and like running out of products. And I just remember thinking, this woman, she is on it. And it's just like, people, I think, don't give the attention to the systems, the inventory, the data, like the things that really drive a business and help it be successful, right? They might focus more on front of house or more on the food, but you guys were really focused like across the board. And as a data loving human, I was just like extra rooting for you because I knew how hard you were working on like really dialing it in and getting it right.
Well, I think that was part of the difference of the business model, right? Taste of Pace, like most restaurants, has a huge menu, depending on lots of different variables and vendors. This was like maximum 20 items. We'll do the same thing every day, all the time, and we will be the best at it. If my menu didn't have a jumping jack factor, meaning if you didn't want to do jumping jacks after you ate a menu item, it's got to go, or we have to make it awesome. Because you know how a lot of places you'll have 50 things on the menu, but only like 10 or 11 are awesome.
Yeah.
So that was kind of so we could focus on volume and throughput. That was more the name of the game. And of course, hospitality, but let's not have to reinvent the wheel with the processes in the back of house and systems all the time. Make that easy, make that fun, for an industry that's already notoriously difficult.
And then remember, we had to do that out of the kitchen size was maybe 650 square feet, maybe less. Wow. Front of house, maybe like 100 square feet, right? So now it's like all the challenge, everything's stacked up against us, but that's fun for the two of us. Or how do we solve this problem? Yeah. When the tickets really started coming through the machines from the 12 apps that we were on, and like our own app, and like they started coming through, we're like, oh, we got to turn the machines off. I'm like, don't turn the machines off. We got to break it. We have to fix it right away. Break it, fix it right away. So, as much as we wanted to, and it was painful, then we always had to over deliver on hospitality. So every person that walked through that front door, it was like they were walking into a fine dining restaurant, handing the menus out to them. Please let me know if you need help running through the menu. Like, we got made fun of. I mean, it was the smallest restaurant in Pasadena. I remember this 9-year-old kid came in, and he came in before his parents, and he goes, "Where's the restaurant?" And I'm like, "You're in it." He's like, "This is it?" And like kind of laughed at me, right? And I was like, "Look, you're going to love the food. Just give us a shot here. Yeah. What would you like,
Yeah, I think too. I mean, I remember going to the location for the first time and thinking the same thing. Wow, this is teeny. I did. But again, okay, this is another thing I'm just going to call out, and another reason I want to have you here is like, you all were not concerned about what it looked like on the outside as far as size, as far as how is a restaurant defined. What are people going to think about how many seats we have or whatever? You were like, we have the model, we have the vision, we're going to execute on it. And you built that business on your terms, like from day one?
I wanted to be a stop up, eat something quick and go, or I wanted it to be a to go place just based on those ideals of simplicity I had from
Yeah.
before. And I knew that we couldn't take on a full sit down,
Yeah.
the bigger your dining room, the bigger your problems kind of thing. Luckily we didn't. So it's like I knew what we were capable of. And so we had to set the expectation that we had some seats if you wanted to stay, but it really wasn't a dine-in place.
Yeah. I did dine in there.
You
I
did,
will
but
say I did.
those bench was so vibey and cute.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was addicted to your ranch just as much as I was the spicy daddy. Oh my God.
Oh,
Okay. So when you were telling the story about when you called your parents and your dad was belly laughing at his retirement plan for selling sandwiches on the Venice beach, did you guys maybe in the back of your minds or in the front of your minds have the sense that like you wanted to grow this beyond a single location eventually? Like, was that something that you had in mind from day one, or what was that like?
yeah, I think definitely we're like sky is the limit. Let's play a game, and we're journey people too. So it's kind of like I don't know where this is going to lead. Our dream isn't to have one location, but let's just start somewhere and see if we got something that other people might want or think is worthy of more than one location.
Yeah.
So we kind of like we'll figure it out, and then you figure out each step. You're like, oh, more opportunities are here now. Do you want to go this way or do you want to go this way? And what do those look like? And you learn. But I'm like serial entrepreneur. I have ideas. Chris will be like, ooh, let's run with that one. And we'll just do it, and
Right.
throw it out there. And perfection can really prevent you from starting something and moving forward.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We leaned into it, and we still had the catering company out of there, and then we had Daddy's Chicken Shack, and that was picking up, and the catering was busy, and it was kind of bursting at the seams. And we had a long-term plan of expanding. We knew we kind of had two routes that we possibly could go: raise capital and maybe have a corporate company, a corporate concept, or a franchise, right? And Pace is just a systems and processes, guru. So, it made sense for franchising. But what really happened and sped everything up was when the pandemic hit and we were prepared for it. We didn't know it was coming, but we were prepared, and the opportunity started to arise. The hedge was the fried chicken concept went up to 400%, and the catering went to zero. Right.
Yeah.
So it sped up a lot of things. We were very, very tech heavy, but it wasn't a tech company. It was tech to deliver hospitality, either digitally or traditionally. That's what it really was. And, and to collect data to actually be more hospitable and give a better guest experience. That was the whole idea. Right. So when COVID hit, it sped up all the technology that we had in place, all the systems and processes that we had in place. I thought it was going to be like a 3 to 5 year. And I'm like, Pace, I think it's here now. Right. When that hit, everybody, was online. You had to be, right.
Yeah.
We were still open, so, and we were as busy as we ever were, and things were breaking. We had to fix them really quickly. I think we really did a really good job of fixing those things. But that's what really happened. It sped up that process, and maybe 5 years of adaptation with the technology happened in a year.
Right.
And that was crazy.
So how long, like, I guess we'll say like, COVID hits, Taste of Pace goes down to zero. Does that business ever come back? Does Taste of Pace close at that point? What's happening on that side of things?
We were trying to pivot to bowls, like a bowl concept that had our main menu without letting go and reinventing the wheel, things we already made to hopefully, not to be too much of a divot in the groove, right? Just kind of keep making the same kind of things that people knew and loved, make them in bowl form. And maybe that would turn into like a healthy concept and a filthy concept. So you had Taste of Pace and Daddy's are in the same place. But the amount of effort it would take during COVID to start that just wasn't worth it. So I had to look at, what I had ahead of us, just kind of like, I think we're here. And I'm a fighter. I come back from anything, and there's decisions that you make, even when you feel like something is absolutely insurmountable to come back from. You can, if you really want to. And it was just more of like, I'd been doing it for 10 years. And I was like, I think I don't want to ultimately revive what it was and what I knew it would take to do that. I was like, I'm going to lean into Daddy's and whatever opportunities are next. And I think that takes huge courage.
Yeah.
And it was a very, 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 very emotional decision. And then it wasn't. You kind of just go through it because, you know, when it's your business and it's your name and it's your this and your struggles and the challenges you've had to overcome and blood, sweat, and tears and confidence made you, all those things. Yeah, it's hard, but it was a time and a place, and it was amazing, filled with mostly amazing memories. And I learned so much. My confidence from what I did with Taste of Pace and then what I did with Daddy's is like through the roof, you know, and when it's not through the roof of what I think, it's when I start to help other people and they're like, need this, like you did for me. You know, you've built something and you're just like, I can fill the gaps here and here for you because I've done them and I know this works. So it's led to the next thing.
And I forgot to mention too, which is obviously the most important thing in our lives, but we had a child in that time frame too. So right when we opened Daddy's in August or November of 2018, our daughter was born at the same time. So we opened it, and then Pace went and gave birth, and
30 days after the opening.
30 days after the opening, pretty much, right? So yeah, she gave birth 30 days after the opening. So you know that changed a lot. That rewired a lot of things too. To to put our priorities in place and say, hey, we're building a family now, and what's best for our family.
I love that. So Taste of Pace closes, and I'm so thankful for you for sharing that part of the story, because I think it's so hard for people to close things, to end things, to move on from things, even when you have all the information, right? You know that something's taking off, or you know something's, you're just done. Even if you don't have something like already set up to go like next, like sometimes you just know that this is not it anymore for whatever the reasons are. And just, I think celebrating endings is something that's important to do, and what you accomplished and how you grew as you went through it, I think is a beautiful thing. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Okay. So what happens with Daddy's next? Because I know that there's more to this story.
One night, fall of 2020, we had been growing at an exorbitant rate, and it was really wonderful and extremely painful at the same time. And, you know, when you have those days when you're so exhausted, you can't put the words together anymore. At the end of the day, I was on the floor at our house, and we were having one of those, I was like sitting, you know, laying on the living room floor, and he's outside, and I'm like, and I like say this person's name who we spoke to 2 years ago. I was like, no, not that one. You know, that one. You know, I could barely talk. So exhausted. He's like, oh yeah, because we started to get approached by investors because our business was just like boom, 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 when everybody else was crashing pretty much. And we were learning about it, and we were learning more about the corporate side. We need to learn about the franchise side. So he's like, oh yeah, that guy. We have a call with him the following day. He's like, let me put you in touch with this. So his relationships of Chris's that led us to taking on our investor who helped franchise the whole concept.
Yeah, really an old 20-year-old relationship. And it was somebody who I confided in when we were looking at the space. Because anytime you're leaning into a space or looking at space, there's a lot of doubts, and, you know, you're unsure. Your risk, you know, tolerance has to go up. And I reached out to him, and he just gave me great advice at the time and said, look, you know, just start documenting everything. Start your systems and processes, all that documentation now. Know your numbers, right? And I listened to that, and it was kind of like, yeah, good luck. You know, like at the very beginning, it was great advice, but it was like, look, talk to me a couple years from now. And it really happened that way. Like 2 years from now, I called him, and I'm like, hey, this is happening, you know, with Daddy's right now. And he's like, what? You know, it was one of those kind of conversations. And he's like, hold on. All right, stop talking to everybody. Let me make a couple calls for you. I'll give you a call tomorrow. Right. And that's kind of how it started.
Amazing. So you made the decision to franchise Daddy's. Can you share a little bit about that journey? And then ultimately you decided to leave the business. Maybe you can kind of just share with us, you know, what was it like to be a part of the franchising process? And then ultimately, you know, what caused you to, move on?
Business partnerships are very gut oriented. Timing is also everything, like anything in life. We fell in love with our investor. So we had a couple of other investors that we were chatting with that we were not falling in love with. they had a blank check for us, but it's like we need like resources and elbow grease and experience because we don't have the experience to scale a national brand, corporate or franchise. So we ended up partnering with the founder of Remax, the real estate firm, really like out of the blue almost, but the timing was right because he was starting a family fund kind of as a succession plan. Because he was like, okay, I built Remax 50 years. It was this big monstrosity. He's just so passionate about business. He's like, I want to start a private equity fund and then invest in other service-based businesses. So he wasn't necessarily looking for food, but he knew that, it's great strategy and exciting to invest in, scalable food concepts. Yeah. So we met and we had this meeting in our like dinky little patio in Pasadena in like January of 2021.
January 2021, he came out with a couple others on the team, and we had to make a boardroom in our back alleyway, which legitimately has a trash can in it, and we had to time it around when the trash actually comes. There's like the dumpster or whatever, right? It's crooked. It's got like a pitch to it, and we made this this square kind of conference table with outdoor patio furniture and put umbrellas up, and we're like, all right, I guess this is where it's going to happen, and that's where it happened. They came out and we had a 3-hour, pitch and conversation, and just the chemistry was really there right from the get-go. Actually, the alarm from the parking garage went off next door right in the middle when it was his turn to speak. And he just spoke louder, and you could see him get excited and just perk up and be like, this isn't going to stop us. That was a magical first impression, I think, on both sides.
I will say this about other people who may get to the investment part of their business. Yes, the paperwork has to make sense for everybody, but it is also a gut feeling. Don't be afraid to hide the stories of your grit that led you to where you are, because that's what investors see is like, these kids are producing an incredible amount of food out of this tiny space that's shared with their other business. They are soldiering through COVID. They want to know how you weather storms.
Yeah.
Right. So as a piece of advice to the listeners out there, be proud of your grit, not martyrdom, but be proud of your grit. Right. So
yeah, that's great advice.
He was looking, and it was kind of right place, right time. So we decided to partner at that time. They had the franchising know-how and resources, and we were going to build a whole franchise system with, I had already had systems for how to run the business A to Z, but really a franchise becomes two businesses. It's the relationship between the franchisor and the franchisees and how that business is now going to work, and the actual restaurant locations and their, selling chicken sandwiches to the customers and how that's going to work. So I was appointed the CEO. Chris was appointed the president. He saw our leadership skills and talents. And it was like, for both of us, an MBA for the 2 years that we did it. We sold like 150 franchise locations.
Wow.
It was a ferocious, wild ass ride. It was amazing. And we had another child during that time. We have a very sick habit. We have to stop opening restaurants so we don't have more kids. Not that we don't want more kids, but I think we're good. So in the spring of last year, so that's, you start to get past the, okay, we're really like, the systems are here, this is done, right? You now have a training program, you now have a blah, blah, blah. And now it's just opening units, making sure they work, refining. Not that that's where a lot of things need to happen, because the stores have to fill with people. You have to have marketing plans. You have to have all these things. So it's not like it was by any means on a cruise control.
Yeah.
But for us, it was more of a gut check moment with the travel and the workload and which we don't really mind because it's what lights us on fire, but you want to make sure you're still lit on fire with what you're doing on a daily basis. Yeah. And what we learned through a little bit of soul searching was that we are early stage startup. That's where we thrive and flourish the most. Now, I had experience with Taste of Pace with meetings and KPIs every Monday and tweaking and improving and becoming better. So I do know what it's like to ride the ride of 10 plus years, day in, day out with the same product and the same, business. So I knew I could do it, but I was sort of wondering, is this where I'm going to be looking at for the next 5 to 10 years? And ultimately the answer was no, but the business was in a great spot for their team to, expand and take over. And I don't know, it was an amazing experience. We'll always be the founders of it. Yeah, we are building our next chapter.
That's amazing. Chris, anything you want to add?
No, I just think that, where we started, and I wouldn't change a thing about it in hindsight. The way we started, there were so many challenges, and we really loved that part of it. Mm-hmm. We loved the challenge. It was almost like, put something in front of us and we'll solve that problem. We'll fix it. And then when you're doing that and you're going through all those things, you start to identify what you need in the future. Mm. And I think when we actually had the means, we had so much that had happened in that short period of time that we knew exactly what we needed to build the next chapter when we partnered with, Dave and Gail Linegar and the Area 15 team, the Remax team, to bring it up a notch, right? And we had everything that was kind of Frankenstein together and that was just holding together, it was held together by threads, had now upgraded to enterprise, upgrade, the equipment and the systems, and really create this symphony that we had created, by our, with our team and by ourselves, through going through all these trials and tribulations, to then take that and tie it all together and bring everything up, upgrade it, take it up a level, and really see how the machine works with all that hard work that was invested in the past.
Well, it was awesome to, observe and to, you guys were so busy, but Pace and I kind of kept in touch a bit, I was able to kind of watch it from afar. And it was so awesome to catch up with you, Pace, after, you both, exited, right? Decided to move on. And again, just recognizing, what is it that we want? Do we enjoy this work? Is this what we want to continue doing? Is this what we want for our families? It's an important part of making decisions in business, right? And in life. So just congrats on doing what's right for you guys, because a lot of people are afraid to do that. So I think that's awesome. What are you guys doing now? Are you building something new?
I will say this, there's a lot of inertia. Okay. So you can't just be like, okay, and we signed the paperwork. Email addresses don't work. We're no longer involved. Goodbye. It's like, you're still just like, whoom, whoom, moving at this like speed of light. So I didn't really slow down. I started helping people right away. I was like, what can I help you with? Like consulting, basically. I was like, I've just been a systems person forever. Do you need help? Like, yes. And everyone's saying yes. So I got to really, help other people for this last year. I've done consulting throughout the years, but that's what I have the most, time, bandwidth, and desire for now, is looking at small businesses that have a really nice volume and they don't know how to scale, and doing a lot of executive coaching with founders to make sure that their org chart looks good, that the people are being used in the most efficient way, happiest way. That's what I would definitely say. A lot of people that worked for me, most of them would say, she had systems set up for decentralized leadership. I felt taken care of, but not micromanaged. And so I'm applying a lot of those, and, assigning KPIs and operations, logistics. It absolutely lights me on fire to watch, leaders transform in their small businesses. And small businesses are my heart and soul, because it's so tied to your personal financial well-being that you want to make sure that things are transparent, clear, really good. And that's where Chris and I work really well together, is his passion for putting in technology for transparency. So not only financial transparency, obviously with good bookkeeping, but just logistics, customer data to make decisions, to run a business that is just like a good, healthy business. You want to say more about your kind of special sauce, maybe?
Yeah, just, we figured out from an early stage that we really love working together. So we get to continue that and consult, and we're never really in each other's lanes, but we're still working together, and we have different skill sets. We have different views on things, and it just works, because I think either it works or it doesn't. I don't know how much in between there is.
Yeah.
I think we're hospitality people. We love people. We love hospitality. We love the industry, and it was hard. We're really never letting it go. Maybe we were thinking it through a little bit, but where my passion lies is helping brands streamline and helping brands digitize, which ultimately, like Pace said, leads to more transparency and leads to better data and analytics, so you can make the right decisions and really understand what your business is and who your guest is, which also, I think most importantly leads to a better culture within your institution, within your company, to where now you have better, team member retention, because your culture is more dialed and ultimately leads to a better guest experience. Right. But we just love hospitality. We love helping people, and we love the startup stage. And we love to see when, everybody hits that point where they just hit those roadblocks where they just need that little push because it's there. I think we're both really, really good at we've been through some things, and we also love those challenges to help navigate through.
What I wanted to say about Chris that I think was, one of his huge talents is always thinking backwards from the customer. I don't have that natural thought process. I'm kind of like, I want to make you happy with my food, or I want to deliver the thing. But he's like, but how is the customer experience from A to Z? And what do they really want? Like that's his data and analytics background. Like he came to me, we were not a Nashville hot chicken sandwich concept, but he came to me before we opened. He's like, you really got to put a Nashville on there. And he was really, you got to put a vegan on there. And I kind of shut him down until we literally battled it out. I agreed. And I had time to R&D those two items that I wasn't really excited about. And they were amazing. I made them. It was a wonderful challenge for me to also just be creative, right? Those are your best moments where you don't want something, you don't think you can do it or whatever. And then you do it and you're like, it's the best there is.
I love that you shared that, because when I had gone to Daddy's and sat inside or outside with another person, that person was generally a vegetarian. And it's like just dawning on me. So I would get the spicy daddy and they would get, it was a cauliflower, right? Yeah. So way to go, Chris. Like that's spot on.
Yeah. So that's where he's like, well, what's the customer going to think and what are they going to do? And that's what you really find out what the person who's going to buy your thing needs and wants and how they want to experience getting it. You're good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Do you guys work primarily with, because Chris, you're saying hospitality a lot. Is it restaurants and cafes, or do you work with brands we have a lot of CPG founders, who listen to the podcast. Can you talk a little bit about like the types of businesses you work with?
I'll take that one. We are doing a hot sauce brand. So that's CPG.
Yeah.
And helping them out. And we are branching into lifestyle sector. So think interior design and products, music, kind of anything, any platforms and products in that space of lifestyle. But yes, hospitality is sort of our main wheelhouse. But the more I take on other projects, I'm like, this is sort of same but different, as they say.
Yeah. Well, where can people learn more about the consulting services you offer and just kind of follow along on what you're doing?
Yeah, I would just say stay in touch with our LinkedIn. We put our LinkedIn profiles, I think, here. I still have a Taste of Pace Instagram. So just hit us up, and you can email me at tasteofpace@gmail.com. So we're still not incognito, but we aren't necessarily promoting the services on the internet live. We have enough business flowing into us right now, but we love to entertain anybody who, needs the help, that we're a good fit for both ways. So.
Amazing. And yeah, we'll put the email and the other kind of contact info in our show notes for those folks who want to grab it. Well, this has been amazing. Thank you both so much for spending an hour with me and sharing your story and sharing, it with our listeners as well. I think there's a lot of value for those folks in it. And I'm just so happy to see you both as well.
Likewise.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much, Sarah. What you do is like so awesome. And I think, entrepreneurs, but especially food people, are not numbers people and are not money people. So what you're doing is so much more than helping, people get organized. It's making them prosper, flourish, and stay solvent, which is, key to the artist's survival, right? And that's what I think so many of us start off as in the food business, or artists. So keep doing the good work.
Thank you.
Looking for more content like this? Subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll see weekly podcast episodes as well as other content related to the show. Just visit youtube.com/@thegoodfoodcfo.
Thank you for joining us here today. If you enjoyed this episode or found it helpful or inspiring in any way, please share it with your founder friends on social and rate and review the podcast wherever you listen. It's the #1 way to help good food founders find the show. We'll be back with a brand new episode next week.